2012 financial review of the Ministry of Economic Development be noted.
Mr Chair.
Grant Robertson.
Thank you very much, Mr Chair. The Super 15 rugby season is underway and there's all kinds of interest in that, with the Hurricanes on their way to their triumphal first win in Super Rugby. And one of the things people might have noticed is there's occasional change in the rules when it comes to rugby, and one of them often is around what happens when a mall collapses. And I think the government should take note of the change in rules here, because here's what John Key said in 2009. We are continuing to put in place our jobs and growth plan. This is a rolling maul of initiatives aimed at retaining and growing jobs and preparing the economy for future growth. Well, Mr Chair, the government has collapsed its own maul, and that is currently against the rules in Super Rugby, and it's not what New Zealand needs either. The rolling maul of initiatives of this government has fallen apart, and they are left with two plans, two economic plans: sell assets and sell laws. They are the two plans that we've got. This government has got: sell off assets and sell off the laws of New Zealand. And Jerry Brownlee's looking quizzically at me. Well, the problem, Mr Brownlee, is that an economic development plan for National is a big night at Sky City. That's an economic development plan for National. It's not good enough for New Zealand. Selling things off is not going to grow the economy, and it's not going to grow jobs. And Mr Chair, if we look back over this year of achievement from this government when it comes to jobs, the achievement that we find are another 50,000 people going to Australia, 163,000 people unemployed, and an unemployment rate of 6.9%. But bear in mind that that rate of 6.9% is only there because 33,000 people just left. They left the labour force. They either went to Australia or they gave up looking for jobs. And if we actually include those people, the real unemployment rate is 8.4%, which is actually the worst since the mid-1990s. So the real unemployment rate under this government is as bad as it was in the middle of the 1990s, and that's because this government has absolutely no plan for job growth. But this is not just the Labour opposition saying this. This is businesses saying this, and we saw it in a survey that Ernst & Young did that was published in the Sunday Star Times. And there were several interesting elements of that this government needs to take on board. The first of those was that nearly 80% of the businesses surveyed said that job creation was a partnership between government and business and community.
That's right.
And that's what Jerry Brownlee says. That's right. Yeah, but we see no sign whatsoever from this government of a partnership, of it rolling its sleeves up and saying we'll get involved and we'll help grow jobs. We don't see that. What we see is hands-off government from this government saying we're not involved. Jerry Brownlee's continuing to interject from the chair. I'll take a few more seconds for that. Thank you, Mr Chair. Jerry Brownlee knows that this government could be more hands-on. It could get in and take initiatives that actually help grow jobs. It could support our export sector by doing something about monetary policy. It could do something useful in procurement rather than the words that we're hearing at the moment. But no, this government sits back and it's hands-off, and that's what businesses said in this survey. But the other thing they said was they were asked to rate from 1 to 10 the national government's record on job creation. 1 being very poor and 10 being outstanding. Well, 70% of the businesses rated them average to very poor. Below average, essentially, a fail mark, as the Sunday Star Times called it, on job creation. This is not just the opposition. These are businesses who want to get on and employ people. They're struggling and they're looking for a government that wants to help them out, and it's not happening. It's hands off. Now, the government and Mr Joyce has been particularly excited and spent a lot of time this year on the business growth agenda, these 6 glossy documents that have been presented to New Zealanders as some kind of growth agenda. Well, unfortunately, that didn't go down very well with business either, because in the same survey, 70% of businesses ranked the government 5 or below on that scale of 1 to 10 for whether they could actually develop and implement a business growth agenda. So business has given up on this government. It said they're not there helping us to create jobs, and they haven't even got the capacity to develop and execute a business growth agenda. That is the loss of confidence, Mr Chair, that has happened under this government. That is the loss of confidence that has happened because there is not a real plan for sustainable economic growth. It is not a plan to simply sell off assets and sell off laws so a casino can have a few more pokies. That's not actually Mr. Chair.
Grant Robertson.
That is not actually an economic growth agenda. An economic growth agenda would say it is a moral shame on this country to have 90,000 15 to 24-year-olds not in employment, not in education and not in training. And once upon a time, we had governments, national ministers who said, we cannot afford to let generations fail. Yet that's exactly what they've done. And those numbers go up and they go up. And for all the flash programs and the job ops and the youth guarantee programs, when we actually go out into the community and we talk to training providers and we talk to the polytechs, what we hear is there's so much bureaucracy. We don't even know if we're actually able to deliver what the government wants. It changes every week. That's not good enough. We have to have as an absolute priority in this country, Mr. Chair, that young people in New Zealand don't fall off a cliff face at the end of secondary school. That we actually actively involve ourselves in making sure there are opportunities, not just for one small group picked off at a time, but to say that for all of those young people, we will give them opportunities to get skills and be able to get into employment. And that is missing from this government. Claire Curran says to me it's called hope, and that's exactly what is missing at the moment for young people in New Zealand who see their future in Australia, not here in New Zealand, because this government hasn't been prepared to invest in skills and training and giving them job opportunities. And in response to the Ernst & Young survey, Phil O'Reilly came out and he was asked by the Sunday Star Times, what should the government do? And he said, what the government needs to do is to help subsidise employers so that they can take on young people to get skills and training. And that is a very, very good idea from Phil O'Reilly. I knew he would have a good idea eventually, and he's had it, because that is the policy that the Labour Party took to the election. National Party didn't want to know about it. They didn't want to go in there and say to businesses, we'll help out. I remember when Labour announced that. We said that 18 and 19-year-olds, we would take that money that's been paid for the dole and give it as a subsidy for apprenticeships. I had employers in my electorate ringing me up saying, if you did that, I'd take 2 today. I want to bring people on board. I'm struggling. I need the government to get in and help out. This is not the government doing everything for businesses. It's rolling up its sleeves and being a hands-on government that gives them a helping hand. That is what is missing from this government's approach at the moment. And that's what the Labour Party will bring. Mr. Chair, I want to just refer in terms of the Economic Development Ministry back to the question of Sky City, because I do think it is important, because if this government has anything to think about back over this year, it's the fact that it has mucked around in this space so much that it got a warning from the Treasury that the probity of the process in the Sky City deal was questionable, and yet it ignored it. And actually the Minister in the chair, I will give him this, is the one minister in that government who can at least look at the report of the Auditor-General and say he did something. Because when he came in, he looked at it and he said, this is an absolute disaster. Why is the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff all over this negotiation with Sky City? But unfortunately for Jerry Brownlee, the damage was well and truly done. The Sky City Convention Centre sums up this government. It was a corrupted process. This government thinks that it can be hands-on by corrupting the process. And that is what the report said. It's very clear, Mr Brownlee. The Auditor-General says that up until August 2009, everything was going okay in the negotiations about a convention centre. And then along comes the Prime Minister. He writes, let's cover off the Sky City angle on his briefing paper. And from that moment on, officials in the Ministry of Economic Development and across government began behaving in ways that were not appropriate, and the Auditor-General said that. They only did that because they had that direction from the Prime Minister. And New Zealanders are getting sick and tired of the cronyism of this government, and they want them to focus on job initiatives, on rolling up their sleeves, supporting businesses to employ people, give people hope in New Zealand, and give people a future. And Mr Chair, this government needs to hear the lesson. Young people in New Zealand want those opportunities. They want to stay here. They want to work. But unless there is a government that is prepared to be a partner with business, then that will not happen. New Zealand is a country with great ideas, great innovation, great entrepreneurial skills. It needs a government that's prepared to pull the big levers like monetary policy and the smaller levers like getting alongside a small business and saying, we'll make sure you have an apprenticeship in place. This government has failed on job creation. It's the view of business, it's the view of the Labour Party, and they must do far better.
The Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Well, I think